Hello, it's Taylor from Texas.
Hey, what's up, Taylor from Texas? How you doing, man?
So, my most controversial opinion is that the government, the United States, specifically in the United States, should be forced to provide every legal U.S. citizen with a firearm when they turn 18.
Interesting. So, you think that the U.S. government for your 18th birthday gives you what kind of firearm are we talking about here?
Just a handgun.
Just a handgun.
Shotgun. I mean, I guess it would probably be standardized. So either it'd probably be a long gun of some kind.
Yeah, probably a long gun is good place to start.
Just because those are the least regulated. But the idea that you hear all the time that healthcare is a human right, and so we should have universal healthcare. Obviously you're from Canada. They have. I wouldn't necessarily call it that, but it's pretty dang close to what you would get from that.
It's universal for like everything, but you're like not for dental, but pretty. It's not. It doesn't cover dental or pharmacy like prescriptions, even though prescription medications are like so much cheaper in Canada. It's crazy.
So when I hear the argument that healthcare is a human right, I don't automatically connect that with the government should provide it for you. But if that's the logic that everyone makes, then self-defense, or in the United States, the right to own a firearm, is a human right. So then why should the argument not be that the government should provide it for you?
I guess the problem with that is that a lot of people would be like, I don't want a gun. They just wouldn't take it.
Correct. And you're more than welcome to not accept it.
Shouldn't it be closer to some sort of like when you turn 18, you just receive like a sum of money that you could use for, say, whatever you want. I guess whatever you want, but maybe it could.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the whole just giving a straight cash, because then you could use it for whatever you want. But I guess my argument, there was a small town, I think it was in Georgia, that was having, and I say small, like a population of like 520 people.
Yeah.
Like
proper small.
And they were having a huge rise in burglaries, and it was just like a one group of guys that were like burglarizing the place. And so the mayor came up with an idea, and that was he wrote like because it's not a law because he's the mayor, I guess it would be like a declaration of emergency or something like that, where every house, if you owned the house that you were living in, you were required to have a gun in the house. And if you didn't, then the tax funding that the city had, the town had, would buy you a gun. And you had to have a gun. And the burglary rate dropped by 98% in 2 months.
Interesting. Do you know the name of this town?
I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head. I could probably try to Google it.
Hold on. Georgia mandatory.
Yeah, I want to say it was in the 80s.
Mandatory gun. It was in the 80s. Georgia town gun ownership. Kennesaw, Georgia, local law says that every head of household residing in the city limit is required to maintain a firearm. That would be it. It would be from
because I think it's still in effect.
And Snopes covered this. They did a fact check. Not that Snopes is shit at all, but it says in 1982, the Kennesaw City Council unanimously passed a law requiring heads of household to own at least one firearm. People all over the county said there would be shootings in the street and violence in homes. And in fact, it caused the crime rate in the city to plunge. And then Snopes says this is mostly false. And again, it's Snopes. They're clowns, but
right.
I don't know. We'll look into this more in the after show, but it doesn't say that. It says it's mostly false, and knowing Snopes, that means it's mostly true.
I think
so.
The thing I would hope that would happen from this is that you would build a culture that would teach people about firearm and firearm safety at a much younger age, and teach the respect that firearms. And then when you have that level of an armed society, everyone has to have a certain level of respect for each other.
Sure.
It's like, and so I just feel like that's one of those things that would be a big cultural shift. And there's a lot of people who talk about how like the conservative, you could say conservative.
It's almost like
how conservatives are always losing. They never push their own thing, right? They're always just trying to hold back the other side. This would be my argument for making that push. It's like, if they're going to push for that, fine, then push for this.
Sure.
It's almost, if anything, it's almost like a big ask as well, where eventually it's just repeal some of the firearm restrictions that we currently have.
Yeah, I mean, I will say with the health, like as just like a I guess, pushback to that. But with the universal health care, like that also applies to people, you know, under the age of 18 who would not have a gun, which is
Right.
tens of millions of people. And then also like, you know, the infirm and all that stuff. As someone who comes from Canada, I'll say that's really like the only thing this country is missing is.
Yeah. And
you can't have everything.
Using that as like an argument. I don't necessarily have any, like, to me, if universal health care, like if it was certain limitations, and my issue is that I just don't like the government having the right to do anything. Like another controversial opinion I would say is that like I'm technically against the death penalty in the sense that I don't think the state should ever have the ability to put someone to death. But at the same time, I think we should be way more lenient on civilians killing criminals during the act of a crime. Like the case in Houston recently where the guy at the taco shot the guy. Right. Like,
yeah. Well, I think he's, I mean, if you've seen the video, I'm sure you have, I think he's in hot water for when the guy was like, when he we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago, when he grabs the guy's gun and then just drops another one in him for good measure.
And I'll be honest, that shot, looking at it, because I watched it a lot, and you almost see like him kind of jump when he does it. I think he will argue that was a negligent discharge. That, like, you know, as you squeeze one hand, you typically squeeze the other. And if he's still hyped up on adrenaline from having shot a guy 8 times, you go to grab that other gun, you squeeze one hand, that hand squeezes, and you just happen to be, you know, he's still holding it on the guy because he still had a legitimate reason to hold, you know, to have the guy at gunpoint.
Absolutely. And maybe he'll get off. Maybe he'll get off for that reason exactly. But yeah, that is, I think, what I mean. I think most people agree that's why he's in trouble.
And I guess, and again, like in that case, like I would look at, like, because at the end of the day, the DA just, if he would have simply not brought charges, there'd be nothing there. And to me, it's one of those things where I think that. Like,
I mean, there was the bodega owner this past summer. There was the bodega owner in New York who stabbed the guy who was like trying to get behind his counter, but I believe he ended up being released. I mean, New York is maybe one of the worst places in America for this, but you're not allowed to even defend yourself in New York, let alone you want to talk about like carrying out, you know, defending yourself. You're legally not allowed to defend yourself in New York City.
Well, and that's the thing is that, like, the bodega owner, he got out, but like how much rigmarole did he had to go through?
Oh, your life gets turned upside down.
Yeah, you know, and so like that, to me, if anything, that in itself is a punishment to prevent people from trying to defend their own rights and properties.
Sure. But also then what happens when obviously the wrong people, again, it's like every time there's going to be edge cases in one way or the other. In your scenario, the wrong people, you know, people are going to be getting killed who probably shouldn't be, and then, you know, that'll be its own problem. It's like no matter what, I mean, you're always going to have one or the other. I think
when you're looking at a sample size this large, there's no such thing as a solution. There's only trade-offs.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's well said. All right, cool. Thank you for calling in.
Yep. Thank you.
Appreciate it.